CEO Ian Fraser of Fathom Nickel joins me today. He's here to discuss the upcoming drill program that they released news on here today, January 16th, 2024. Just announcing details on their Albert Lake and Gochager Lake properties, due to start in just a couple weeks' time. Hotly anticipated 4,500 meters, split roughly between the two. I won't step on Ian's toes too much here. We have lots to discuss here, and I just thought it was a good time to get him back on the show and just pick his brain on what this drill program is hoping to accomplish. Ian, it's good to see you again. How are you today?
Doing well, Matthew. The doors have finally thawed out, and it's actually okay to get out and walk the dogs now.
Yeah, no, we have a decent amount of ice build up here. We're two prairie boys here to flyover provinces with some kind of cold weather the last couple of days here. But we're not here to talk about the weather. We'll leave that to meteorologists, I suppose, right? Why don't we get into it, right? Ian has a bit of a visual package here too that will kind of help this conversation and spur some discussion. But Ian, if you wanted to bring that up, and I'll just kind of introduce the first question here, and I think probably the easiest place to start is you've got two huge properties, and if you followed along with the story, there's been a lot of geophysical analysis and work going on prior to drilling. Here we are now, though. This is going to be a momentous drill campaign. Do you want to Ian, just provide an overview? I mean, how many targets are you going to be drilling out? And maybe just one by one, kind of introduce them to us, kind of first date style, if you don't mind, right? How many holes do you anticipate hitting? The depth of those holes, true depth versus drill length. I mean, I'll kind of spur you as we have to for additional information, but do you just want to kind of introduce their primary targets to us?
Just Albert Lake specific, or
yeah, we'll start with Albert Lake.
Yeah, because Gochager, we're still working through that, but I think everybody's aware of this target that has resulted from the 2023 surface time domain electromagnetic survey that we did, and it has defined a pretty robust conductor. And the beautiful thing about it is it coincides very, very nicely with a gravity feature. And it happens to be positioned on the eastern flank of this incredible multi-element soil anomaly that we have. And furthermore, it's located right along strike with the very, very famous and very high grade, albeit very small production, Rottenstone mine. There's really nothing else to do than bring in the truth machine, get the drill going, and find out what the heck is causing this density, this conductivity. I think it's pretty safe to say that that's not 450 meters or 550 meters of massive graphite. Graphite's a tremendous conductor, and it's not massive. So it's mineralization of the type to be determined. So that's pretty exciting when everything's kind of lined up. And as I said, it's we've done everything we can do. It's time to drill.
Yeah, nothing left to do with the truth machine. So why don't we? This is a good segue. Do you mind? I'll pause here if we have to, but do you want to bring up the PowerPoint that we have kind of cobbled together here, Ian? I'll just ask you to kind of just highlight the couple of your targets here from here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is a bit of a compilation here. It's important to realize the location of the Rottenstone deposit, and so this is we were able to put it back together again based on some of the not a lot of great historic data, but some of our own drilling and some of the drill records that we do have. We put a shape to it. And now that we have defined this feature down here, the blue plate, I mean, this was a preliminary model. It won't have changed much, but, we're seeing this zone of conductivity that we've recognized over 5 100-meter spaced lines. And it's very strong. It's a heck of a lot stronger than the Bay Island trend. And here too, the BHEM sees a little bit, and certainly the AirTem did not. But when we got on the ground, this really jumped out. And there's a couple of other images that we can look at here, Matthew, that just sort of shows the boldness of it, the robustness of this feature. So yeah, I mean, this again, this is great. We've the gold iso shells here. This is a function of gravity inversion. So instead of just viewing this thing as a 2D plan map, the plate of the EM conductor, the blue plate that you see there, that is actually, the very top edge of that is somewhere 350 to 375 meters below surface. So it's not at surface. The modeling is telling us that it's probably suppressed a minimum of 350 to 375 meters below surface. The gravity, again, it's sort of approximately 300 meters down. There's something that's a bit more dense than the surrounding country rock. So again, one remaining thing to do, and that's bring the drill in and find out what this thing is. And there are other targets. I think if you want me to just ramble on here, Matthew, maybe I'll go to the next slide and just stay focused on this particular target.
Sure. Yeah. Let's complete this one. Yeah. I think this is
okay.
One that people are excited to hear about too, right? So.
Yeah. So I was having a bit of fun with this today. This is again something my colleague Dr. Peter Lightfoot put together, and the pink being the granites, the tonalites, that being the very, very stiff rock. It doesn't really allow for magmas to penetrate, and these metasedimentary rocks, these yellow rocks, or this yellow configuration. So these are the sediments by nature. They're layered, they've been folded and they've been faulted, but they do provide pretty good conduits for magmas to move around in between contacts and this sort of thing. And, we do recognize, in fact, Vanessa's done a wonderful job of coming up with some structural interpretation just based on the pattern of the soil anomaly. And Dr. Larry Hulbert has done some work, and he's recognized that this is very, very structurally complex down in this area based on the mag. And I think it's safe to say, and Rottenstone is a perfect example, that there was a large magmatic event that has since been busted up by the tectonism that's taken place post the emplacement of this mineralized ultramafic magma. So these things are, they're now broken apart, and they're forming these individual enclaves, these individual boudins, but they all come from a common source. And so it's important that we don't lose sight of that there is potentially a very, very large, I think our last discussion, we threw out the term Mother Rottenstone. But, for this argument, let's just say this particular boudin here and this rectangle that you see here, that is the EM plate as defined by the 2023 TDM survey. This polygon here, I've just dropped that on there, and this is very, very conceptual, but this is the gravity feature. So what we're going to do is we're going to target the leading edge of this, I should say the top edge of the EM plate, which is estimated to be about 350 to 375 meters below surface. It has a slightly shallow dip to the northwest, which I think is a good thing, because if it was steep and very, very conformable with the interpreted geology, then we're faced with potentially something that's formational, and that's a bit of a red herring. So the fact that it appears, based on the geophysical interpretation, that it's slightly discordant to the geology is a good thing. It's set up very, very nicely. one final point I might make is this particular arrow here that Peter has put, and again, this is a pseudo cross section, northwest to southeast. Let me just back up one slide. So northwest to southeast, and again, Peter didn't have this when he created this cross section. So I've kind of manipulated a little bit and said, okay, well, let's put it right here. And this plate and this polygon is this plate and that polygon, and this distance would be, roughly 350 meters below surface. So that is hole number one. And, this is the sleepless night part of the episode here, where everybody gets excited. We've done all our homework. We've done the studying. It's time to sit down and see what the result is. So, and we will, again, I mean, geophysics, it sounds like I'm rhyming off a bunch of cliches here, but, it'll get you to the dance floor, but it doesn't necessarily get you dancing. So, it's going to be a little bit fuzzy. In a perfect scenario, boom, we're into a mineralized ultramafic body. But, and this is where the borehole EM comes in. So if we, happen to be, I fully anticipate that we are going to see individual intersections of ultramafic rock through the course of the drill hole. I just, the more and more we drill out there, you get these tiny little apophyses of ultramafic. So I think we're going to see some ultramafic rock. But, if we do intersect what we want to intersect, the borehole EM will give us an indication of, okay, do we want to go right? Do we want to go left? Do we want to go up? Do we want to go down? And if the first hole does not intersect a mineralized ultramafic body, and we don't explain the conductivity, then the borehole EM will say, well, it's 25 meters that way, it's 25 meters that way, or that way. Mm-hmm. So it's absolutely critical that we do the borehole EM exercise after the first hole. And then if we get into what we want to get into, so then the decision becomes, okay, well, how many more holes do we want to put into this thing at this particular stage? Because there are other targets that we would like to test as well. So these are all things that, decisions are made on the fly. And those decisions will be made upon seeing the first couple of drill holes.
And that's always, I think that sort of very prescriptivist approach where it's an extremely strict 2 here, 2 there, and never shall we ever change. That's not the way that exploration works, right? It's by the nature of it, it's a fluid enterprise or fluid event. But I guess if I may just, based on where you stand now, right? This is, so we're still on our first target here. Based on this conceptualization, is it fair to say right now the plan is to, if you've got 5 to 7 holes, 500-ish meters each, 400 or 500 meters each, 5 to 7 holes, that 2 are right now kind of budgeted for this target? Is that the idea?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would say 2 to 3. And then, and these holes are potentially up to 500 meters. And so, there's 1,500 meters right there. Mm-hmm. If it goes very quickly, that potentially gives us a little bit more room in the kitty to do some additional holes and go past the sort of planned 2,000 meters that we've got sort of budgeted for. And then, and budgets tend to be a bit fluid too, right? So, we've come up with a cost of what this is going to be, and there's going to be variables in there. We actually, we were able to secure use of a twin otter, so that's going to make our dependency on the helicopter that much less. So that's a bonus. And again, if the contractor is very, very good at what they do, then past drilling is lowers the cost essentially. So we'll see what we can do.
And I can't help but ask, and again, I know that this is, we're kind of playing imaginary how many angels dance on the head of a pin sort of questioning here, but if things are going gangbusters, would you even move the rig? I mean, if this turns out to be what everybody kind of, I think this is a shout out to Mega Copper. I think this is his on CEO there. But if this turns out to be something, gorgeous, do you even move? I mean, how much do you sacrifice trying to find other discoveries if you've got that kind of capital D discovery here too? And if this is more of like a kind of a philosophical question, I guess at this point, right? But
yeah, again, I mean that's I mean that would be a wonderful problem to be faced with, and I think it's safe to say that another Rottenstone type intersection is a game changer, is potentially, a company maker. I mean, these are all things that, you strive for as a junior explorer. And I think that's one of the luxuries that a junior explorer has is you can make some on the fly decisions, and you're not restricted, and we do need to do something at Gochager in the wintertime too. So that's going to be another sort of controlling feature here is with the funds that we have raised. And again, that could all change again upon success. But we want to make sure that we've thoroughly tested this thing. And there's a couple of other really good targets that I'd like to get to as well. And then, of course, be able to have enough dough to go and do what we want to do at the Gochager project as well. So,
well, why don't we? Not to interrupt you here, pardon me, but so let's just keep going on Albert Lake here, right? We can kind of put Gochager. We can chat about that one in a second here, but let's assume, right? We've got our first target here, and maybe we'll skip visuals here again, but let's assume that this one works out well, right? But you decide that you want to move on. What's number two, right? This is target number one. Where do you go next? Where's the rig moving to next? If you don't mind showing us.
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, and maybe this helps answer that question, Matthew. So the middle slide, this is the new grid that we're going to be doing as soon as we get the guys out there. So, I didn't put it in this presentation, but this area has been, if I can use my cursor, we have had individual EM grids that, well, it actually goes right off this particular image, but pretty much captures this entire area. And, we've, this particular bullseye right here, actually, that is the Bay Island trend. So that is this area here that we have, we drilled in 2021, 2022 and defined the 300 meters of mineralized hosted or ultramafic hosted mineralization. But this has popped out in one of those grids. And this particular area is right in here on the west side, the northwest side of this particular peninsula. And this particular grid sees something building up, and the lines were not extended over that peninsula, but we have a buildup of conductivity right in here. So we'll get this done, but we're estimating 7 to 10 days to get this completed, plus one other additional target that I can show you on the very next slide. And I really like this because here's Rottenstone. And we know with all the work that we've done is we have what we call the F fault, which is oriented sort of right across here, and it has a shallow dip to the northwest. And the Rottenstone deposit is in fault contact on the hanging wall side of this particular fault. So it suggests that it's been offset. There's probably a continuation of Rottenstone at depth somewhere along the F fault. And the fact that we're starting to recognize all this conductivity in this area, in this area, I'm very, very encouraged by, because we have drilled holes out here on the big island back towards Rottenstone, and we're recognizing that conductivity was building to depth. We're looking forward to getting this information, getting it quickly, and developing some drill targets in here. And also, this grid will define the continuation of the plate that we're going to be testing in the first place, because it's, the way that grid was organized, and it was summertime, we couldn't do any surveying on this particular body of water here. So we'll have the northward continuation of this very first drill target. And, if I'm allowed to dream, and I do like to dream, if this very, very conductive feature, which has a shallow dip off to the northwest, and if it's just continuing to get deeper and deeper, is this the footwall offset of the Rottenstone deposit? Wouldn't that be something?
Let's get drilling, eh? If I may, let's slide back. Sorry to, again, don't mean to cut you off. Slide 3. Why don't we head back to slide 3, because I think that's a decent transition, just to help people kind of conceptualize where we are on this map, because I think that's a good homepage. If I may, are we going to see Trombley Olsen get tagged this campaign?
I'd like to drill a hole, but it all does depend on what we do here, and I would like to prioritize this ahead of the Trombley. The ultramafic that we recognize on surface, which is on the south side of this pond, nobody has drilled a hole from the ice towards the known mineralized ultramafic, and there's a coincident magnetic feature, and you do have some gravity hanging around here, so it's a potential target as well, but it would probably be number 3 on the pecking order.
And that you stole my next question right there perfectly, right? So I mean, you can see there the blue plate, priority 1, almost due north of there on the peninsula. You see that little kind of the semicircle blob. That's priority 2. Priority 3, as you say, if you get there, right? I mean, if things are going gangbusters, then those 2 targets will probably soak up your meterage. But then Trombley Olsen is kind of the bronze medal right now for this season.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it.
And so I think there's an interesting question. I'm wondering on the fly here. Maybe I'll just we'll just focus on Albert Lake for this one, and in a month's time or a month and a half time, when you've got more definitive content for Gochager, I'll have you back on to chat about that campaign, because they are sort of 2 discrete campaigns. But there was somebody on co.ca, and it's a good question, right? I mean, ultimately the question is, and this is where I think after this one I've got a couple of the kind of grab bag questions for you, but how big is this, right? I mean, this is big, right? Especially that your primary target is large, 500 meters. It goes off the map, right? As we saw in a news release today here, that you're actually, it's not even completely mapped yet to the north. But what's in terms of sizing, in terms of what the potential is for the size of a deposit? And I know this is all going to be extremely hypothetical, because it's perspective, the ultimate perspective sort of conversation when you haven't even tagged it yet. But how big is this, and how big could it get in terms of a sort of a potential deposit on its own?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I respect that people would like to know an answer to that. We know we've got conductivity over a minimum of 500 meters in strike. So you can see here our grid lines, 100 meters spaced apart, and the width. You need to be careful, because when the guys are coming along and their instrument starts to go beep 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 beep, it'll probably ringing the loudest here in the middle, and then it kind of beep 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 decays again. So how wide is it? I don't know. I don't know. And if you're gonna attach any sort of size to it, you need a length, you need a width, and you need a thickness. And the other missing component here, Matthew, is how thick is it? if I can go back to this plate, did I? No, I didn't put in the actual. I've got a section of the Maxwell plate model, and so you can see the 3D plate in 3D space. But our geophysicist is very, very careful to point out that we're only seeing the top. That's what's given us the response. The fact that it's giving us such a strong response tells us there is potentially some thickness to it. But how thick that is, well, I'll know in probably by the 7th or 8th of February. At which point, the back of the envelope geologist can use a density of 3.3 and have at her. Figure out how big this thing potentially is, but I can't comfortably come up with any kind of a number at the moment.
No, that's reasonable. Like you say, one axis of a three-dimensional space is a difficult thing to try to get an estimate on there. I think, as you say, that it's just exciting. We're on the cusp of knowing, right? And so everyone's just kind of eager to know just what the heck is going on down there. And there's a lot of eyes on this story. So no, I think that kind of covers it. We've done a decent job of, we've got the map up. People understand where you're going. I mean, I think the name of the game here is that it's going to be a fluid and dynamic situation as you pull core to the ground. But maybe, like I say, I've just got kind of some grab big questions to end this conversation here. And I think when you already answered here, I think it's critical, and I can create a timestamp, and I'll timestamp this for the answer. But you've already answered it positively that you will be using borehole EM live during the drill campaign, right? We've talked just before, and you kind of bemoaned that you had to come in after the fact to use it, right? And if only you'd had that live sort of approach, it would have just helped things so immensely. That is the case, right? Yes, that you'll be using.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Oh, it would be just very, very foolish for us not to have the borehole EM crew there, because if two things. We're helicopter supported, so that's conversation for another day. But eventually, I'm looking forward to limiting the use of helicopter. But so we've got to go out there. We got to drill a pad. We got to build a pad, and then we got to put the drill on there. So we're going to be 400 to, let's say 450 to 500 meters of drilling. So that drill is going to be there for a few days. And if we're successful, we might want to just stay right there and swing the azimuth 20 degrees and say, well, the borehole EM is suggesting that, off-hole conductivity is potentially a little bit stronger north, or maybe it's a little bit stronger south. So before we make the bold move of saying, okay, well, let's go 50 meters along strike and try again, I'd be a little bit more inclined to attempt a second hole from the original pad, and then borehole EM that again. And if we're getting comfortable with the signal that we are seeing in the borehole EM, well, then maybe it's time to pick it up and move it down 50 meters, or get really aggressive and go 100 meters. But and then the borehole EM is like, it'd just be ludicrous not to maximize that tool.
And so this kind of dovetails nicely into a couple other questions I have. I mean, so I want to talk about XRF. I had a good conversation a couple of weeks back about, oftentimes you see, especially, obviously not on a porphyry style, right? That would be a little ridiculous. But at XRF, you'll see companies, before assays, they think they've got something good. They'll release XRF. They'll release core photos. They'll give kind of that teaser to the market. And you've expressed reluctance to me in terms of sharing that sort of information. Do you just want to explain why we might not see that publicized? Because I'm sure some people, retail investors love them quite often, right? But obviously sometimes there's a danger to them as well. Do you just want to kind of explain your rationale?
Yeah, no, and no, I'm glad you asked. And Fathom Nickel, we did put out a news release on XRF results. I had a good conversation with the Securities Commission, and they said, well, yeah, if you do this, and you state that, and you state this, that's fine. And I actually inquired with some colleagues of mine, a little bit more senior than myself, and they said, well, yeah, if you do it in such a way. But the important thing, Matthew, is yeah, if you had a solid piece of copper and you put the XRF there and you put the XRF there, you'd probably get the same response from the XRF. But if you have a piece of core that you're seeing interstitial net textured style of mineralization, the nickel value is dependent on where you put the beam. And what we do is every meter down the hole, the geotech takes an XRF reading, and then we focus in on zones where we have mineralization so that we can kind of reconcile what the XRF is relative to the real assay. And we we have heaps and heaps and heaps of data, but there's no magic number that they're not one-on-one. I mean, that's the point I'm going to try and make. So if you put something out and you're saying, well, we've got 4% nickel, and then the assay comes back at 0.7, you're starting to look a little bit like a clown. And I know for a fact that there's been some XRF press releases that have not been followed up with the real number, which is a no-no. But I think that explains that what XRF said and what the real lab said were not one and the same. So I'm reluctant to do it, and I wish I had a picture of the. We use it, and I think I've said to you before, Matthew. I find it. We're starting to recognize the horizons at Albert Lake, at Rottenstone. We're starting to recognize the horizons that host the ultramafics and the pegmatites and a few other things that were, and this is where the XRF is very, very useful, because we start recognizing the geochemistry. And when we start recognizing the geochemistry, if you have a hole that has not intersected ultramafic rock, but yet the geochemical signature is telling you that you might not be far off, that is where the XRF is very, very valuable. I'm not going to be releasing XRF numbers because I just think it potentially gets me in a whole lot of trouble and makes me look like a bit of an idiot, and I don't want to do that.
Don't need the help sometimes. That's how I feel some days. So if it comes to, if I can just boil this down, I think that if you've ever listened to Ian speak, and obviously I think there's a testament just right now. This whole conversation is that you're deliberate, technically proficient, and you're in pursuit of a good science. And if I can kind of give the layman's elevator pitch version of what you've all explained, is that it's just not good science, right? That there's too much variability. You look at it from a securities perspective, that it could kind of get you in hot water, make you look like a fool at the market. But then also just it's just not a reliable enough mechanism to be released in a vacuum to the market to be played with the games of telephone, I suppose. Is that kind of a fair summation? Yeah. So maybe now I'll just will we see core photo? How do you feel about core photo?
Absolutely. No, I think that's worked well for us, and we'll be able to recognize pentlandite when we see it, and if we see net textured mineralization, Rottenstone style net textured mineralization in this very first drill hole, we'll start feeling pretty good about ourselves. And then, but my one caveat there too, Matthew, is, nickel tenor at Bay Island Trend and nickel tenor at the Rottenstone, we're slightly different. So, we just have to be so careful, because this can be a cruel business. Just your excitement and your anticipation based on visuals, and then you get the numbers, and it's like, So,
bit of a rug.
We'll no, I think, I certainly think that we'll maximize the being able to use core photos, potentially, some borehole EM results. We've got an audience, and that's fantastic. Um, People want to know, and we want to demonstrate that we're doing a good thing, and there should be quite a bit of news flow in the next several months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, on the cusp of exciting times here. So I think honestly, I'm kind of scrolling through my own little roster of questions here. We come down to the final two, and I think that the one is up on the board right now. That there's conversations around getting a camp built, right? I mean, we're just trying to drive costs down, right? So will we see? I just see on the right hand side, obviously, it's up. Right, it says you've submitted permits for the camp. Is this the turnaround time where we'll see a camp this year for Gochager, or is that a next drill campaign sort of thing?
Yeah, completely separate than the Rottenstone project. It's a little bit complex. It's just going to be a lot easier to do this in the summertime and under the umbrella of this exploration permit that allows us to explore in the entire 22,000 hectares.
All in one fell swoop. No, fair enough. And so then, final question then, just the financing, right? So I mean, obviously 2/3 of the dollars are closed, right? The kind of the Canadian or the flow through version, like Canadian, is closed. Still waiting on the tail end $1.5 million hard dollars in charity or whatever. But any update there? I mean, in terms of will you hit the max? When do you expect it to close, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, we're even today we've been approached. This thing is open, and there continues to be interest. The folks that have organized charity flow-throughs have indicated that we could still use that particular avenue. So right now it's just a question of adding up all that has been expressed to us in terms of interest, and we're quite confident that that will get us to the $4.5 million as we originally announced, and probably get that closed up. I don't see it happening this week, but potentially next week we'll get that all final, and then the final T's crossed and I's dotted, and away we go.
Yeah, and you know what? You just triggered. This is a question I had thought of, and then I lost it in the midst of our conversation. But what's just meters per day? What do we expect? Right. So it sounded like it's going to go faster than I was anticipating. What's the meters per day that you're as an average sort of target?
I've always found with a helicopter supported program, if one uses 60 meters, it doesn't sound like a lot, but 60 meters a day, 60 to 80 meters a day, that brings in all the time required. The hole's been shut down, you survey the hole, you tear everything down, and then you fly it to the next location. It's just the time in between shutdown and startup of the next one is all in that 60 to 80 meter average.
Yeah, so it won't take long, right? I mean, you're talking week and a half of drilling to get these things done. And now I guess this is a natural follow through, and then this will be the end. Do you have a notion of turnaround time for labs, right? So if we kind of pretend that a week and a half times 5, you got call it 6 weeks or so, 8 weeks of drilling to be had at Albert Lake. What's the turnaround time for labs from there?
Yeah, best case scenario, labs are continuing to say 4 to 6 weeks. So we finish our drilling the first week of March at Albert Lake. Some core will have been delivered to the lab by then. The second batch, if you will get to the lab by the middle of March. 6 weeks hence is the end of April. Gochager, we start that up middle of March, take that into, the first week of April. Again, there will have been a batch delivered halfway through, but the second batch, call it first week, April. So that puts us into, towards the end of May. So end of April, end of May, we will probably seeing the results of both drill programs.
Not long, eh? No, that's exciting. Exciting stuff. An exciting Q1, Q2 here. So, final thoughts, Ian. Let's just pass it off to you. Anything that you wanted to touch on that maybe I missed?
No, Matthew. No, just thanks for doing this. I like to think that Fathom's a transparent company. There's obviously things that we can't put out to the public, but I'm appreciative of the audience that you have generated, and I enjoy these conversations, these one-on-ones, and being able to hopefully, it's you try and put as much as you can in a press release, but by the time you get to page 2, most of the eyeballs are rolling up into the back of the head. So these sorts of things, I think, hopefully give a little better understanding to the audience of what it is we're doing. And I wish it was easy, but it's not. It's certainly challenging. But I think we're in a pretty unique situation where things have stacked up beautifully, and one thing remains, and we'll know very, very soon.
No, I think that I'll kind of echo what you said. I appreciate your time, and you are transparent, and I always appreciate. I learn an immense amount whenever I sit down with you here. It is always kind of take me to school kind of moment here. So, no, thank you, Ian, for your time, and good luck. And I'll see you on the frozen Canadian Shield here in a few weeks' time. I'll be up there. We'll be so if we can meet we'll be nice. It won't be cold. It won't be -40. It'll be nice and warm. Okay. All right. Thank you, Ian. Have a good day.
Look forward to it. Thank you very much, Matthew.
Thanks.
Bye.